box market was very different in terms of its competitive structure. So, and of course, the big thing is really the applications. And increasingly, broadband applications are going to be the way this country and all countries address what in the past have been intractable problems. And we think one of the most important things about their plan, we think there are a lot of ways in which our plan is trying to get the country on the right side of history. It is fundamentally a call to action to follow where the macro technology and the macro markets are going. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that we have applications that really help us address healthcare, really help us address education, that improve the performance of public safety and government generally. And so that's a really important part, and that has to be done across all kinds of devices, improvements in all kinds of networks, and very importantly, a focus on applications that help drive our national purposes.
Another issue that was brought up at the hearing yesterday had to do with television broadcasters and
Yes.
the proposal in the plan that they
Yes.
voluntarily return
Yes.
some of their spectrum. Representative Dingell didn't really seem to buy that it was going to be voluntary.
Right.
If there's resistance from other members of Congress to the point that they don't go along with those things in the plan that you need Congress to do, such as authorizing sharing spectrum auction revenues with the broadcasters for giving back the spectrum, does the FCC have enough carrots and sticks in its, to mix a metaphor, arsenal to be able to accomplish this without Congress?
In terms of incentive auctions, the FCC does need the Congress to give the FCC tools to help it in the reallocation of spectrum. This is actually one of the parts of the plan that I think I'm most proud of because, again, it puts us on the right side of history. One of the fundamental lessons that we learned in looking at it was the importance of spectrum and the difficulty of correcting if you don't have enough. There are a lot of other inputs into the broadband ecosystem that if it turns out you don't have enough of them, the market will create them, and that's perfectly fine. But no market can create more spectrum. We have what we have. The problem is in the reallocation based on market forces. You know, I used to be in the Wall Street analysis business, and if you had an investment company that was forced to invest money based on the way it invested 60 years ago, that company would go out of business right away. You can't do that. You have to react to what's going on today. The single biggest capital investment that the United States government makes every year in terms of the broadband ecosystem is how it allocates spectrum. And yet, in many ways, spectrum is being allocated not on the basis of markets, not on the basis of technology, not on the basis of consumer demand, but rather on the basis of history. So the FCC needs tools such as giving incumbents incentives to reallocate spectrum where that's what the market demand is. I feel very confident that if you look at where technology trends are going, where market trends are going, where advertising trends are going, that if the FCC is given those tools, there will be a sufficient number of broadcasters who will volunteer. We're actually asking that in order to accomplish what we want, it's a relatively small number of broadcasters in a relatively small number of cities that can create huge upside for the entire American economy, as well as, I think, creating upside for themselves. So that's really what we're asking for, and I think once that's well understood, Congress will feel that they should give us those tools.
Should broadcasters be compensated for that spectrum?
We think they should be. We think that one of the interesting things to look at and to understand this, think of it this way. This is really about kind of how broadcasters themselves view the appropriate asset mix. Broadcasters are all going to have a different point of view about that. If you're the CBS affiliate in New York, you may want to be able to do the Super Bowl and NFL football in high definition, which requires more spectrum than if you're running home shopping networks, right? The CBS affiliate in New York is worth a lot more than the number 25 broadcaster in New York, right? But interestingly, their spectrum is worth exactly the same. So we think if we strike an incentive, we'll allow this. If the CBS affiliate wants to participate, great. They're probably less likely to want to do it. But the number 25 broadcaster in New York, who, by the way, isn't probably doing local news, they're going to have a different incentive structure. And so the key is, how do we allow, and it's not just about broadcasting, it's about all the spectrum. It's the government spectrum, it's mobile satellite services. How do we enable the market to send signals about the relative worth of spectrum versus existing business models?
When it comes to the spectrum and spectral efficiency, we have heard all along how it's been improved over the many years it's been around, and about Cooper's Law, about spectral efficiency.
Right.
The government still has about 50% of the spectrum. Is that a correct statement?
But not all megahertz are equal. So one can argue about that. It requires a very sophisticated analysis.
And, okay, when it comes to the beachfront, how much of that is still available?
Well, look, part of our point of view is you have to look at this over time in a dynamic basis. One of the things we're doing, and we make various recommendations, not just about broadcast spectrum, but also about mobile satellite spectrum, also about government spectrum, that what you need to look at it, what are the tools that send the signals? I was at the FCC during the implementation of the 96 Act, and one of the things it taught me was you can't really know exactly what's going to happen in the world. You have to be able to course correct. John Malone gave a great speech in 1992 in December in which he very accurately predicted that the forces of microprocessors, digitization, and fiber optics would lead to a brand new exciting world. He got that exactly right. Then he went on to say, that brand new world is 500 channels. That was exactly wrong, right? And if a guy like John Malone can get it exactly wrong, then we all can, because there were these students at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana who were inventing the thing called Mosaic that became Netscape, that created a universe of an infinite number of channels. Now, Malone then course corrected, right, and helped create At Home, which was the country's first mass market broadband provider. And part of what we say in this plan is there are certain things we need to get right, like we need to get spectrum right, we need to get rights of way right, we need to get universal service right. But the market is going to do all kinds of things that we can't predict. We need to make sure that the inputs are appropriately available, and then let the market work its wonders. Now, one of the most important things we think in the plan is understanding what are the barriers to using these tools to solve a number of our nation's problems. And so we go into, what is preventing the best courses in the world from being offered to all students everywhere in terms of education? What's preventing our kids from going around with 25 pounds of textbooks in their backpacks that are probably out of date, instead of using the most up-to-date information that they get over an e-book? There are a lot of barriers to this use, and I think as you see over time, as this gets implemented, you're going to see a lot more uses of it. But the important thing to understand, it's a call to action that understands we're going to have to course correct in a couple of years. There are going to be many developments that we can't anticipate now.
This is C-SPAN's Communicators program. Our guest is Blair Levin, who is the Executive Director of the Broadband Initiative for the Federal Communications Commission. Lynn Stanton with Telecommunications Reports is our guest reporter. Reed Hunt said in a speech recently that part of the goal in the 1990s, and you worked for him at the FCC in the 1990s, was to make broadband the new national medium. Was that a purpose of y'all's in the 1990s?
Well, Reed is a much better historian than I am, and I'm going to become an historian maybe later in life, but I'm not going to do it now. What is certainly true, and Reed was very, very prescient in a lot of ways, was the understanding that every country needs a common medium that has certain characteristics. I would say that there were a number of decisions that we made back then that were useful to the internet and to broadband. But really, it is the market driving it. The market is speaking. This morning I was reading something that said in early 2000, when asked, would you rather give up television or the internet, 80% of the folks said we'd rather give up the internet. Today, a majority of people say they'd rather give up television. And if you look at the under 45, it's like overwhelming in terms of that. That's consumer speaking. That's the market speaking. It's very important that we make sure that broadband is widely available. It's very important that we make sure that it provides both a common medium for civic purposes. It's how people will engage with their government. It's how people will get a lot of news. But it's important to let the market determine that.
One of the ways that the plan proposes making broadband more widely available is to require some future spectrum licensee to provide, or licensees to provide, free or very low-cost wireless service that would be presumably advertising-based.
Yeah.
But it acknowledges that ad-supported telecom services haven't really taken off in the past,
Yeah.
and suggests that they might meet with more success if, quote, appropriate business models can be identified,
Right.
close quote. Is the FCC going to identify the business models? Will it be the prospective licensee? And in either case, is there going to be an opportunity for some kind of pilot or test or proof of concept for that business model before someone goes and commits money in an auction?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me say a couple of things. One of the things we found very early on, and we're very public about it, was that the FCC didn't have the data that we thought we needed to do certain things. So there are certain recommendations